Okay, in this next video I'm going to be showing you how I mix down stems in using Logic. So let's jump in. This is all in the box, this one, so I'm just going to show you how I do it. So we're going to start off with the kick. The kick's in the low, really important part of the track. It's the I guess it's the most used in a track. You've probably got more kicks than anything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start up by getting a couple of plugins up. So on my master chain, what I would do is just put in, I have a metering setting in here, which would consist of, let me just have a look, I'll get this open, go to metering master, and let me explain what this is all about. Right, scope, I believe that, oh no, that does work. Yep, so, right, so if I press, right, take the limiter off the end. Right, here we go. So the first thing that comes up is the sample grabber. This is part of the flux, and what this does is this takes the audio from Logic and puts it up on the analyzer up there. So so if you're wondering what that is, that's there. I have scope there. I learnt that one off Mark Maitland, who's also done a mixed tank course. We're good friends. We teach each other little tips and tricks, but I learnt this from him. This is really useful, especially if you're looking at the waveform and the amplitude of like kicks and things. So you can really see, you know, how much headroom you've got and how much space you've got in your mix, with like the way that you can see, like if there's in your percussion especially, there's you can see the transients really well in this. I mean, it's great as well. You can zoom in with the different like the different zoom and parameters in that. You can change it to a spectrum, a scope and everything else, but I just keep it basic. And like I say, I learned it from Mark, and it's just to get a good baseline for my kick drum. Yeah, so and then after that I've got my this adapter by Plugin Alliance. This is great. I mainly use this for sort of mixing and mastering, mainly mastering, because it's got some really cool features in. I'll probably cover that on the next video. But then there's tonal balance as well, which is a cool isotope plugin. So I've got like a tech house target there where you can choose a folder of all your own tracks or your reference tracks and put it in, and it shows you across your bands whereabouts, you know, your frequencies are playing a big part in, or if they go out of this here, you can see that you know, it's not in a ballpark of your reference track, so that's really cool as well. Another thing I put on is Voxengo span, as I mentioned at the beginning. I have that quite a lot, so that's really good for your mid-side correlation and your RMS, and then I just have a limiter on the end sometimes, just to, you know, just to take the if there's any little peaks that do go over, I tend to just put that on just to make sure, if I'm working with anything that's crazy and I'm not familiar with the audio, it might just go too loud. So yeah, if I hit play on this, so the first thing I'll do is I'll listen to the kick. I mean, that's got a snare in it as well. I should have maybe not bounced it out, but if you're a mix and master engineer, sometimes you get these, you know, you get these and they do have other elements in, and they are mixed, and for whatever reason you can't get them to resend it, or, you know, the time frame's not there. So it's good practice to always have things that aren't 100%. So I'll go with that. So right, when I first start on my kick drum, what I would do is I would, like most channel strips would probably start on an analog desk that would have an EQ. Either you could have it before or after, but I just sort of take out 30 Hertz below 72. I mean, you can change that because, like I said before, you can get phase issues if that's not, you know. But what I would do is I would just make sure that anything below 30, unless I was making like R&B or hip hop or something with a big sub, and I want that very, very low end that just sort of tails off. You know, I'd put it onto a shelf just so it gives that, you know, low end. But a lot of the time I don't. I like to keep the low end tight, so it's I know that there's nothing going to be under there that's going to affect the stereo field. And then next I'm just going to try and use the plugins which are in sort of Logic, because, and then I know you guys have 100% got them. So Next after that, I would probably go for a compressor. The Logic one is great. And then I would use this. I'll bring that down. This is my own default setting. And what I'm going to do is, the reason that earlier on I explained about the unity, the gain and unity gain when it hits 0 is that I want the signal to come into my processors. I want it to be healthy. I don't want it to, I don't want to be having to drive the threshold and the ratios and everything else, because you're going to get that unless it's for an effect. You're going to it's not doing its job properly. So you need to give you need to give it a healthy signal. So if you notice, like this, the new Logic compressors in 10, they've got like the input gains and output gains and things like that, which are really useful, which is similar because it's like putting a gain stage in between. So you can do it on this, but there's a lot of plugins that emulate these that don't do that. They're just hungry for signal. So on right, so if I hit play on this, and let's have a look what's going on. Right, as you can see, there's nothing at the moment. There's no signal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the input gain up, and if you look on the right hand side, you can see over here it's coming in. It's probably there we go. But yeah, you can see it's all you're actually pushing into the threshold. So it's a bit like the Varimuse, like the Manley compressors. So if you're how they work is when you push it into it adjusts. So it's a variable. I can't even say it. Put my teeth back in. A variable one. So that's quite similar to how you push that, but that's because the threshold's on 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that this reduces by like 1 or 2 dB max, because what I want to do is I want to kind of just take away the take away the attack and the transients and bring the crest of the kick right up. So I'm going to start off by doing that. And also, because there's a snare, you can see in the waveform on there, and if I also look at scope here, you'll see on the snare. So because it's in the same audio strip, the snare is going to be louder because it was a lot louder in the track. So what I'm going to do is I would probably go back to the client and say to them I want it individually on its own. If I knew, now I can see from scope and from the waveform that is going to be it's not going to be a problem, but you're not going to get as much out of your kick unless you really compress your snare. So that could be difficult. But I'm going to try and do it anyway because it's a challenge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I've got like quite a slow attack and then a really fast release. And then the ratio, I'm probably going to have like 1.5 around that. So for every 1 dB it goes over the threshold, it compresses by 1.5. I don't know if you can see it, but I actually use the SSL compressor there, the hardware one, when I'm doing the mixing and mastering through the analog, and it's quite a similar thing. It's a VCA, vintage VCA one. So going over to this area here, I always have the auto gains off. I just leave those off. Tend not to mess with those because they're only on here. They don't have them on the traditional one, so I'm unfamiliar with how they behave a lot of the time. So I just like to keep that classic sort of sound. Over here you can see the limiter section, where that's to engage it, and here's your threshold of the limiter. And also you've got a distortion, which is like where the magic happens on this one, because you've got a clip. So instead of when your waveform goes over the threshold, instead of compressing it, which is putting the lowering the amplitude of the volume, what it's actually doing is it's distorting it. So the waveform, instead of it being smooth, it goes into a square wave, which then effectively clips it. So it'll square it off. So that's where you're going to get your volume right up in your kick drum or your channel. So and then I'm going to make sure this limiter light flashes on. But one thing I'm going to look at is just if there's an internal side chain, just make sure that this is sort of down here. You can have a filter, and what this will do is this will bypass the lower areas, so it'll put a filter on the low end. So say if you had anything above 100, 103, I'll have a low pass filter, and then it'll side chain. So, but I tend not to use that often. It just depends what I'm doing. But this is the main area. So what I want to be seeing is this limiter light clip in here, and you can really see it does it on the snare. So I'll just turn it up a bit. If I just turn the if I just try and level match the gain here with that, so the input is 6.5, the output, I'm just going to see how it sounds, just turning it on and off and seeing what it's doing to the sound. It's really sucking up that snare, the tail on the snare. It's really bringing that out, which I really like. So one thing I am going to do is that I'm probably going to, because of that, I know that there's a kick, there's all the kicks in the snare. I'm going to look at the snare and how I can deal with that. So so it's not going to eat as much gain reduction in the inside the dynamics of the compressor. So what I'm going to look at is probably go to the Pro Q3, and then I'm going to set up on a, I know I've got one there, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this one especially just for if I take these off just like that, I'm going to use this especially just for the snare. So what I'm going to do is hone in on the snare there on the second part, and there, if I can do it, there we go, get in. So what I'm going to do is just probably put a small note there with, so if you use the outside circle here, it turns into a dynamic EQ. So what I'm going to do is just try and bring that down a little bit, just so it's not peaking too much over the kick. And then just take it in a bit. And if you hit the headphone there on the Pro Q3, you can actually hear what you're taking out. So now if I turn this on and off, you can see that the Pro Q3 will just be taking some of that top end weight out of it, and it'll just, I mean, it might affect the mix, but it'll definitely flatten it off a lot more. So if I look at scope here, it definitely rounds it off and makes it a little bit tighter, so that when you come to doing the final mix, you'll have a lot more headroom, because that won't just be coming through. I mean, you can use things like Wave Shaper, you can use Soothe 2. That's a good plugin to do things like that. So I mean, we'll try the Soothe 2 actually, because I haven't explained that one to you guys yet. So this, I think I briefly mentioned it earlier, but here we go. So it has some great presets in here, but I'm just going to go with a flat start just to show you guys. There's two modes, there's soft and hard, and I think a lot of the time I use hard because I really want to take things out. So I really want to take out the frequencies I don't want. The sharpness is the amount of how sharp the transients are. and you'll notice they'll get a lot thinner. And what I'm just going to do is, so I don't lose any of that kick drum or take any of that out, I'm just going to put on just a filter down here and just make sure it's not going to take out too much. That one, there we go. It's similar to the Pro Q3 where it's taken away the top end. But this can really sort of laminate it, can make it a lot flatter. You've got your attack and your release a bit like your within your compressor. So what I sometimes do is I have it on softer, and then I have a longer release, so it softens it and it's not as intense. So as you hear when it's coming back up, it's not as snappy, but for this one we'll keep it hard and a faster release. One thing to bear in mind if you use this is, depending on your processor, how much oversampling you can do, but I always have this on 4 and Ultra because I've got a new computer this year, so it can handle it quite well. But if you can't, just keep the real-time one on low, and then when you bounce offline, it's still at the best quality. It has a side chain, which is really cool function, so you could you could side chain things against each other, which is good. You've got your mid and side, so it's got stereo mode and mid side mode, and then a link, which is your left and right channels to independently bring the volume down. So as you see the snare, if the left channel was louder, it would still bring the right hand side down the same level as it would the left. So what I tend to do is unlink that, or I have it mixed very, on a small percentage. Another thing on here is the mix. If you didn't want to lose all that, you can sort of parallel mix it by having 50% there, and your delta here is what you're taking out. So that's the sound you're taking out that it's reducing if it's on 100% mix, and the bypass one is to bypass the plugin. If we just get this up and have a look, on and off. So I just want to take a little bit of that high end out of this and try and get that weight of the kick up. So I'll take that off. Right, there we go. That'll do for now. That's I know that's a good start there. Let's make sure that. Right, so I've noticed it's only actually activating on the snare. So in that case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push more of the input gain, and then just try and get that kick to come through a lot more. So you can see now it's engaging on the kick. So I'm going to leave that as it is now, and then I'll move on to the bass. Just wanted to let you know these videos are absolutely free. It's a 5-hour tutorial series, and that was one of the parts. So thanks for watching. If you would like to join the journey, subscribe. I've also got a playlist where I travel the world, and I also document it. I do vlogs, and the weird and wonderful world of a touring artist, the highs and lows and everything like that. So if you want to see that as well, I'll put a link below. But also the educational stuff, the mixing and mastering services are also in the description below. Thanks again for watching. Your subscription means a lot to me, and keep creative, keep making the tunes, keep pushing on, support each other. Much love. GAWP out.